Hello everybody, my name is Kara, and today I'm here with the TBR Book Tag. I think this tag was originally created by a blogger, and that was A Perfection Called Books. I will link the original blog post down below, and I was tagged by the wonderful Justin from Triumphal Reads, so thank you so much, Justin, and I will of course link his channel down below as well. Number 1. How do you keep track of your TBR pile? And mostly I use Goodreads, like the one to read shelf is basically what it sounds like. I just put every book on there that I'm interested in reading. But I also do have like my physical TBR, which is like obviously the books I own that I want to read. Those two things, of course, do not match up because I obviously have many more books that I want to read than I own and I want to read, but I also own books that are on my physical TBR that I haven't bothered to put into my Goodreads TBR, so it's kind of a mess, but it works. 2. Is your TBR mostly print or ebook? Definitely print. I think I maybe have like one ebook that I need to read or that I want to read. Like, I don't even own an e-reader, and I do prefer print books. Number 3, how do you determine which book from your TBR to read next? Now, in general, I would say I'm more of a mood reader, but recently I've been doing a ton of readathons, and I actually really like having challenges for different books, like for different kinds of books, because I think it encourages me to branch out more and to really like think about which books I've had for a while that I was really excited to read and I just never did. Number 4, a book that's been on your TBR list the longest. So I actually went to my Goodreads shelf and checked, and the very first book on there, like the very first one I had that I think was part of the books I imported from my Shelfari TBR list when I first got my Goodreads. Do you guys remember the days of Shelfari? Anyway, so the very first book on there that I apparently added October 2nd, 2015 was A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. I actually haven't had this physical copy very long, like nearly that long, but I do want to get to this book. This will kind of be like my third time's a charm for Charles Dickens, because I've read Great Expectations and I've also read David Copperfield, and I really didn't like either of those, but I do think I'm going to enjoy this one, and I've actually seen the film version that we had to watch for one of my history classes and I really enjoyed that, so I'm hopeful that this is the one that's going to actually like speak to me. Number 5, a book you recently added to your TBR. And one of the most recent ones, I think the last but one that I added, was How High the Moon by Karen Parsons. And this doesn't get released until March 5th of 2019, but I'm already very excited for it. I actually heard about this from a glowing review on Twitter from, I think, Emma Carroll. And from what I heard and from what I read, this is a middle grade book, I think, that focuses on a lot of really intense and important issues related to race and racism in America during the Jim Crow period in the South. And I think it's about a young girl who's like something about her father, and then she ends up coming back to her hometown because a childhood friend of hers was accused of the murder of 2 white girls. And I think this is going to be a really intense and powerful book, and I always think it's so wonderful when middle grade handles those topics really well, like I think this one is going to, because for a lot of kids, you know, this might be one of the first exposures they have to that period in history or that kind of story. And I think the balance necessary between like handling a really dark topic and also still making it appropriate for a certain age range or a certain like for a reader who maybe doesn't want to jump right into the like grittiest and most brutal parts of that period, I think that balance necessary is really impressive. Number 6, a book under TBR strictly because of its beautiful cover. And I almost never do that because, like, even if it is a beautiful cover, it's always going to be something I'm at least interested, like slightly interested in picking up. But the one that does kind of work is Botanical Shakespeare, an illustrated compendium of all the flowers, fruits, herbs, trees, seeds, and grasses cited by the world's greatest playwright. This is by Jarrett Quealy, illustrated by Sume Hasegawa Collins, foreword by Helen Mirren. Oh, I didn't realize Helen Mirren wrote the foreword. That's pretty cool. Anyway, so this really, really long title book is basically what it sounds like. It's got these beautiful, I think like, are they watercolor paintings of all of these plants that are referred to in Shakespeare, and it has the quotations from exactly when they were referred to. And this was kind of a cover buy, I guess, because normally I would have done at least some research into this before I picked it up, but I was on Book Outlet and it was only a few dollars, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I love Shakespeare, I love like nonfiction kind of about Shakespeare or about like the like historical aspects of his work, and I didn't realize that this is literally just the pictures and the quotes. Like there's no real like analysis of it. I thought it was going to be about like the symbolism of some of the plants he used. So anyway, this is not a book that you can even really read, I think, outside of like the foreword. So I don't really plan on reading this, but I'm probably not going to get rid of it because it's so beautiful. Number 7, a book on your TBR that you never plan on reading. So, you know, ideally I would actually want to read all of the books on my TBR, and I pretty much do, but there's one that I think it's less likely than some of the others, and that is Kisses and Curses, which is a story anthology by a bunch of different authors. I don't actually see who edited this, but I think they're all fantasy short stories, and like there are quite a few authors on here that I really love, like Marissa Meyer, Jennifer Matthew, Marie Rukowski. There are also authors on here that I have heard of that I do really want to read from, but I just don't tend to enjoy anthologies or like short story collections, so I don't know. I'd still like to get to this one, but I'm not really sure when it's going to happen, realistically. Number 8, an unpublished book on your TBR that you're excited for. I'm going with The Iron Season by Helene Becker. This book doesn't come out until September 15th of 2019, so almost a year. We have quite a long wait here. This is the sequel to The Golem and the Jinni, which I adored. That I think is one of my favorite books of all time, and I really recommend it for people who are just looking to get into kind of other genres. Like, you kind of want to dip your toe into like certain genres that you're maybe not as familiar with or as comfortable with reading. Like, it's great as like a beginning historical fiction book. It's great if you aren't really a fantasy person but you want to try just a little bit, because there's just like little bits of fantasy in that book. I think it would even be great if you're not really comfortable with like adult fiction or literary fiction, because in some ways it reads like that, but it's so engrossing and the writing is so beautiful, and it's definitely less pretentious than I think like the stereotypical literary fiction books can be. But I just love that book so much. The characters are wonderful, the plot and the writing and the folklore aspects of it are just beautiful, and I have been looking forward to the sequel since even before it was announced, kind of, because I finished that book and I was like, alright, I mean, it is a complete story, like I can see how you could stop here, but please can there be more? So I was so excited when it was announced, and I just like, I feel like I've been waiting for this book forever. Like, we don't even have a cover yet, but this is already one of my most anticipated releases of next year. Number 9, a book on your TBR that basically everyone's read but you. That is Sleeping Giants by Sylvain Neuvel. This is the first book in the Themis Files series, I think, and the third book has actually come out already, and I honestly feel like anybody who's even like marginally into science fiction and fantasy books has read and loved this trilogy, and I still haven't picked up this first book. It's told in like this really interesting format, and the only thing I really know about it is it's about a young girl who falls down and like finds herself in this like giant metal hand, and kind of how everything goes from there. And I think everybody who has read this series that I've heard talk about it has really enjoyed it, but I just haven't picked it up. I don't know, I'm a little nervous because I'm pretty picky about my science fiction, and I'm just a little worried that this is going to be overhyped, but I do want to read it at some point. Number 10, a book on your TBR that everyone recommends to you. Not so much like specifically to me, but in general, and especially when I mention this book in other videos, that would have to be The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson, which is the first book in the Mistborn series. I have read 3 Brandon Sanderson books, and I think they've kind of been like the relatively underhyped ones, even though he's a massively popular author. I feel like they're ones that are not quite as well known as like Mistborn or like The Way of Kings or something, and I've loved them. I have loved everything of his that I've read, but I still haven't picked up Mistborn because like I'm just a little nervous that I'm not gonna love it as much as everyone else has. Like, I've heard kind of mixed things about the way that the main female character is portrayed, and female characterization is, you know, obviously kind of a big thing for me, so I'm just a little intimidated about starting this series when it's so well loved, and I don't know how I'm gonna feel about it, and I'm scared this is gonna be like another overhyped situation where my expectations are just astronomically high and the book can't compete. Number 11, a book on your TBR that you're dying to read. I have so many that I could say for this, but I'm gonna go with The Hero and the Crown by Robin McKinley. This is the first book in a duology, I believe, that is often considered, I think, some of her best work. Robin McKinley is very quickly becoming one of my favorite fantasy authors. I actually bought this book pretty recently. I'm really excited to get to it, and I really could have just said any of Robin McKinley's books that I own but haven't read yet, because I do have a couple others, but yeah, I'm just really enjoying what I've read so far, and I hope that I continue to. Okay everybody, so that was the TBR book tag. I'll tag a couple of people in the description box, but of course if you also want to do this tag, you are totally welcome to. I really enjoyed it. I really like getting to talk about books that I haven't read, you know, like just focusing on ones that I'm excited for, or that I've had for a while, or that I want to get to. That's kind of a like fun and different, I think, way to do a tag. So thank you again, Justin, for tagging me. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you soon with another video, and I hope you love the next book you read. Bye!